Hi everyone. Um, we are meeting after a long time. We have been in touch with each other, but today I'm coming face to face to you, and I hope all of you are well. And I welcome you to a lecture that I will be giving you on the poem Elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. This is in your CC8, semester 4 CC8 paper. And I hope you enjoy this series of lectures. It will be divided into quite a few lectures because it's a very long poem. All right. Now, and I must say that I'm very glad to appear before you. All right. Now, first of all, we must know who Thomas Gray was. Thomas Gray was born in the Cornhill district of London in 1716. In 1734, he entered the Cambridge University, but in 1738, he came out of the Cambridge University without completing his course there, and he embarked on a journey of Europe with his close friend Horace Walpole. In 1741, he came back to London, and from 1742 onwards, he started writing his poems, which were mainly odes and hymns. And in 1742, actually, he started writing Elegy written in a country churchyard, which was not published in 1751, but it was written following the death of a close friend called Richard West. Okay, so here arises the question that if he had written Elegy of a country churchyard, what is the meaning of an elegy? All right. Now, an elegy is a poem which is written in remembrance of the death of some close person, friend, or ally, okay, or accomplice. All right. Now, elegy, therefore, is a poem of mourning. This poem that Thomas Gray had written belongs to a period which just preceded the Romantic period. Okay, it stands in between 18th century and 19th century. Thomas Gray was actually belonged to the group of precursors of Romanticism, and he was one of the poets responsible for bringing in, elements of nature, romanticism, solitude, meditations upon nature, meditations on sunset, sunrise, field, plows, meadows, etc., natural landscapes, everything. He was responsible for bringing these elements into poetry and weaning poetry away from the 18th century form of serious satire. Okay, so his poems combine the elements of satire, combine the elements of somberness, solemnity of the 18th century poems, as well as the romanticism and the natural beauty of the Romantic age, which precedes the Back to Nature movement, which came in a much larger form with Wordsworth and Coleridge. All right, so Thomas Gray thus belongs to this transitional group of poets, and his elegy also has traces of this transition. Now, in this elegy, again, you have to remember that Thomas Gray does not mourn the death of any powerful, rich king or a rich person or a great statesman or a politician, nor does he mourn the death of somebody near to him, any personal friend or any personal loss. He here actually mourns the death of common men. All right, he is talking about the passing away, the death of common men and very simple and common people. Okay, the setting of the poem is a churchyard, country churchyard, where he sits down and he meditates, on the graves which are there in the country churchyard, and he actually starts meditating on human mortality. Okay, now the plain fact of the elegy is that all will have to die, and in death the rich and the poor all become alike. Okay, they are all same, they will all have to go to the same end. Okay, so whether somebody is a rich king or a politician or somebody who is a common man, they will all have to go to their lowly graves. He calls it lowly graves. Okay, so this elegy therefore is about common people. Common people, although it was occasioned by the loss of somebody near. Thus, this elegy has earned Thomas Gray the a very deservedly respected position in the history of English literature because of this elegy. This elegy earned Gray his position in English literature. Okay, so now let us come to the poem itself. Okay. The first stanza. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd wind slowly over the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. The curfew. What is the curfew? The curfew is a sound of a bell, which marked the end of the day, which signaled the closing of the fireplaces. Actually, after the Norman conquest in England, it was a rule that was set down that after 8 o'clock or at 8 o'clock there would be a curfew sound, the sound of a bell, which will signal everybody to close the fire of the fireplace. Okay, now this was not a sort of repression of any sort, this curfew, but it was meant to protect the people from fire. All right, so it was a sort of a restriction or a rule that was upon the country people of the of the English countryside, and it was followed, as a tradition. And the curfew tolls the knell of parting day. But why does the poet use the word knell? Curfew is the sound of a bell. Okay, it is a ringing sound. But knell is the sound of a death bell of the funeral. So in the very first line, we find the poet is connecting the end of the day with a death bell, that is, with death. All right. So the curfew tolls the knell of parting day. This is the beginning of the elegy. All right. Parting day, day which is leaving us, something that is going away. All right. We are not talking about anything serious right now, but it is just that the first line itself brings in the feeling of death bell, knell. And then comes a very typical romantic scene. The lowing herd wind slowly over the lea. The lowing herd refers here to the sheep. Okay, the sheep making a sort of bellowing, grunting sound, a soft grunting sound. They are very slowly making their way over the meadows. Lea are the meadows. Okay. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way. The ploughman, the farmer, he is very tired, and after whole day's work, he very slowly moves towards his home, and the way is not weary, the plowman is weary, the farmer is weary. So the weariness of the farmer has been transferred to the way. All right, so weary way, it is a transferred epithet, right? And the plowman slowly moves his way home in a very slow manner, tired manner, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. So it is as if the poet's mind, also goes into darkness. As the world passes into darkness, the mind of the poet also passes into darkness. So here are the signs of the elegy, the tone of the morning coming in. All right. This is the first stanza. Then we come to the second stanza. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight. Glimmering landscape, the shifting, shimmering, the glistening light of the twilight, of the passing sunset, and the glimmering landscape, the uncertain light, that uncertainty of life, whether life is certain or not. So it's glimmering, and all the air, a solemn stillness, the solemnity of the bygone age, 18th century, is brought in here. The entire atmosphere is solemn, somber, and still. Okay, so this silence, solitude, solemnity, somberness, all these point towards the oncoming romantic age. Okay, solemn stillness, seriousness. There is an atmosphere of seriousness which is accentuated by save where the beetle wheels his droning flight. There is only the sound of the droning, the humming, very monotonous humming sound of the wings, which only disturbs the silence of the passing day, and that is the droning droning noise of the beetle wheels, that is the wings of the beetles. All right, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant fold. So just two sounds, two noises break the sound of the silence or the somberness. One is the sound of the humming, slow humming sound of the wings of the beetles, and the second is the tinkling sound of the bells round the necks of the sheep. Now this tinkling sound is drowsy. Of course, again, the sound is not drowsy, but the sheep are drowsy. So the tinkling sound is again transferred, or drowsiness is transferred to the noise of the bells strung round the necks of the sheep. Okay, as they return, they make a tinkling sound, which sounds very drowsy. Okay, again, it is an instance of transferred epithet. All right, and where do the sheep return? The sheep return to the distant folds. All right, so from over the meadows, the pastures, the vastness, the openness of the landscape, the sheep return into their small folds. So is it signifying the journey of life of man, that man, after the greatness of activity, active and variety of life, ultimately has to go to the fold, that is the home, that is the grave. All right, and so the sheep retire to their folds, which are the places where the sheep are kept. Okay, so this ends the second stanza. The third stanza is Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. Okay, so save that from the ivy-mantled tower, the moping owl. Here Gray refers to the hooting of the owl. All right. Now, but he does not refer to any joyous hooting of the owl. He says that the sound that the owl makes is a sad sound, moping, sad sound. Okay. And from where does the owl makes this noise? From ivy-mantled tower. That is an old tower covered with mossy green ivy. All right. So you will notice that for the first three stanzas, Gray has never mentioned death directly, nor has he mentioned any dead person or any grave or anything. But he is setting up with these small indicators, the drowsy bells, the solemn stillness, the folds, the slow winding of the sheep over the lea, and then again with this moping owl, the sadness in the voice of the owl, he is slowly setting up the atmosphere of a funeral or a dirge or death. Okay, he is setting up the atmosphere of death, end of life. And that is why he is saying that the moping owl is making a sad noise. Why? It is as if complaining. To whom? To the moon. What is it complaining about? It is complaining about that maybe the loss of life, or maybe it is complaining about something that has intruded into the privacy of its existence in the solitary reign, into his solitary realm. Okay, so something which has entered into his solitary reign, maybe it is death. Okay, so anyway, the owl is complaining about some disturbance in the solemn, solitary somberness of the atmosphere. So thus the first three stanzas set the atmosphere for the mourning that he is going to embark upon. All right, because this is a poem of mourning, it is an elegy. All right, and then we come to the fourth stanza. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. So here, the poet is for the first time directly referring to death and to the graves. Okay, he is talking about the graves, the churchyard graves, which lie beneath the rugged elms. Rugged elm trees, there is no luxuriousness about it. Rough elm trees and the shade of the yew trees, where heaves the turf in a mouldering heap. Heaves the turf, that means to dig the grave. The earth has been disturbed. Okay, and he does not say the turf heaved, he said heaves the turf, as if to, he has, it is a sort of periphrasis, which is a roundabout way of saying, as if to accentuate the fact that earth has been disturbed and the grave has been dug, the earth has been dug up. Heaves the turf, and where do the dead people lie? They each lie in their narrow cell. Okay, so what does a cell signify? Cell is a monastic room, a room in a monastery where the monks stay. So it implies simplicity, starkness. a hermit-like living. So that is where the poet says everybody will have to go at the end of life, however varied or luxurious life one may have led ultimately, or however, whether irrespective of the rich and poor, ultimately man will have to go to his cell. Okay, that is his grave. So cell, if it is a room in a monastery, it signifies a grave, and in this case under the elm trees and the yew trees. And there is nothing grand or grandiose about it. It's a very simple cell, it's a very simple grave, of simple people. And then he comes to the point of the people. He says, who lie there? The rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Okay, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. Rude forefathers, the ancestors who have died, they are rude. Why? Possibly because they have been uncivilized, they have been very simple, they have been rugged, they have been maybe hardworking but unlearned. Okay, and so now they lie dead. So they are the poor common people about whom the poet is talking here. Okay, and they lie in their hamlet. Hamlet is a village, as you know, and they sleep. So the fourth stanza ends with the mention of grave, death, and rest, that is sleep. Okay, death, rest, that is sleep, that is peace. Okay, end of life, that implies here sleep or rest or peace. Okay, so now we come to the fifth stanza. In the fifth stanza, however, the poet changes his mood, his tone, and suddenly rushes into a flurry of activities which reflect the active village life. He says, the breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion, or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Okay, the breezy call of the incense-breathing morn, that is the soft wind, the fresh wind of the fragrant morning, the fragrant morning wind. He's talking about the fragrant morning breeze, which welcomes man and wakes man up from his sleep, the refreshing fragrant morning breeze, and the swallows twittering from their straw-built shed, their nests, the clarion call given by the cock, like a bugle, like an alarm, asking men to get up, wake up, and the echoing horn of the hunter. Okay, the horn of the hunter. All these things which raise men to activity, to life, none of these will ever raise these dead men from the grave. Okay, so here the poet is talking about tremendous activity, tremendous life, and vigor, and a beginning of a new day. But there is a shadow of negativity over it, because none of these will be made available to the dead. None of these will come back to the dead. Okay, for them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. So in this stanza, stanza 6, he talks about, he builds up a very romantic picture of domesticity and comfort. Okay, he talks about the blazing hearth. Hearth represents the fireplace. Hearth is a symbol of a place of comfort for the people living in the village, people living in the cold countries, living in the villages, living in the countryside. It's the place, or even in the city, it's a place of comfort, of domesticity. It's a place where all can sit round together and have a family gathering. So it's a place of love and warmth and comfort. But this blazing hearth will no longer burn for the dead, nor will the housewives bring food for their husbands in the evening, nor will the children rise up, the to the laps of their men folk, their fathers or uncles, whoever have come back home, nor will they announce their return, nor will they rise up to their lap for that envied kiss. So all these are signs of domesticity, family, and comfort, happiness, joy, which will which will no longer be made available to the dead people who are in their graves. So these two stanzas, bring up a lot of feeling of activity, but there is this sense of nullity, cessation, end to all of this, all right, which is what brings into the elegy the feeling of the sense of loss, things which are lost, the feeling of loss, and that is what gradually makes it a true elegy. All right, first the feeling of mourning for the common people, for the ancestors, and then a feeling of loss. Okay, and then the seventh stanza brings in another picture. Oft did the harvest to their sickle yield their furrow, oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. Okay, here the poet is describing how these common people, these people who are lying in their graves, who had at one time returned to their home after whole day's work, how these people used to used to wield their sickle to reap their harvest. Sickle is the symbol of the reaper, reaping the harvest. Okay, so how they had once reaped their harvest, or how they had plowed the land which is too stubborn to break, but they with their furrows had broken the soil and had planted seeds into their furrows, and how joyfully they had done all this work, and how they had cut trees and felled trees. They had felled trees, they had cut wood. All right, so all this is a picture of their profession. Okay, their profession, and that is agriculture. So in this stanza, the poet builds a picture of agriculture, which has been the profession of these men. All right, and this is what once again places the poem in between 17th and 18th century, because agriculture as a profession refers to the Georgic time of poetry, which is set between Georgic form of poetry, which is set between 18th and 19th century, and was very popular as a theme of poetry amongst the precursors of Romanticism, and which looks not only to the agrarian culture of the late 18th century, but also looks forward to the element of nature of 19th century by connecting men to their land. Through the medium of agriculture, men are connected to their land. Okay, so this stanza therefore brings up that picture of agriculture. And fine, then in the eighth stanza we come to this four lines, that let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. From the eighth stanza onwards, the poet goes on a string of warnings not to be too proud. That is, he says that those who are too ambitious, ambition with capital A, he has personified ambition, and he said that those with too much ambition should not scornfully look down upon these people who are hardworking and who work in this manner as farmers, and to enjoy their homely joys, comfort, domestic love, and domestic care and comfort, and then go to their deathbed, to their graves. They lead simple lives, but ambitious people should not look down scornfully at them, and nor should grandeur, too much of luxury, luxuriousness, look down upon these poor and simple farmers. Okay, they are simple people. So with this ends the eighth stanza and begins the string of warnings that ultimately all the main theme of the poem, that all the rich and the poor will have to go to the same destiny, same humble destiny, that is the lowly graves. Okay, they will end up in the same place. Okay, and that all must die at the end. Right, so here ends stanza 8, and here ends the first part of the lecture on Elegy written in a country churchyard, and in the second part I will take up the next 8 stanzas. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.